Mine won't be as long as probably intended on the schedule, so I can probably make us up some time here.
Take what you want, and then we'll take a short break afterwards.
All right. So I just wanted to cover a quick fire weather product refresher and talk about some partner updates. Going to start with our criteria just to remind everyone, and then we're going to walk through an example of a fire hazard. We're going to do the fire danger statement, quickly run through the product, talk about some of the headlines, but then go in and show how it appears in now the HWO and ZFP and all those automatically before we had to do that manually. Since we've gone to this format, I think we've only issued 4 SPS for fire danger statements total and 0 red flag warnings. So I know it's probably new to a lot of people, and this is the first time I've been able to give a visual review of it. But I was going to talk about some spot forecast stuff that Matt talked about in his email earlier in the week, and I wanted to follow up with some things and give some partner updates. So the criteria, just to remind everyone, red flag warning, you need 2 of the following: RH below 25, winds 20 or gust to 30, and then a wind shift during active fire suppression. Obviously, we're going to be focused on the first 2, RH and winds. And if we ever get a wildfire, something similar to the Horry County wildfire in 2013, I believe, then we'll have to deal with that then. And me and Terry are going to be working on a wildfire guide. That's the current plans for this fiscal year, just so we have something that you guys can, when we get that rare instance of a wildfire, you have something to go off of so you're not left in the dark. And then fire danger statement is a little different: RH below 30 and winds 15 and gusts to 25. For both of these, NC SC Forestry, you have to give permission because it's all about the fine fuels, and we coordinate that with Raleigh and Columbia typically. You can also call them directly. Wanted to review the collaboration process. Might be new to a few people, or might be a little different, or not what they're used to. Make sure you start early. I recommend on those, especially in the afternoon and the evening shifts. It should be one of the first things you do when you're working on your package, is to start the collaboration process if you think there are going to be fire weather concerns. Ideally, the shift before you would have briefed you on the potential, and maybe it's even in the HWO. You want to ask if other offices are planning to issue a fire weather product for the day, and if they are, collaborate those zones. It's very rarely just Wilmington that needs a fire weather statement of some kind. So the collaboration is pretty key here. We message or call Raleigh or Columbia. They go straight to the forestry officials. So we want to collaborate. While we're collaborating with them, since they have that direct access, we can just call them and talk to them. You can do this using AWIP's collaboration or numbers in the phone book or speed dial. Coordinate on the zones, as I talked about just a minute ago. You also want to coordinate on the time. I've given a first suggestion of like 12Z to 23Z, and this is also in the fire weather guide, so you don't have to remember all of this. And then you want to proceed to create the product, which is what we'll walk through now. So just like any other hazard, when you're making the fire danger statement, this is the same with the red flag warning. Now it's under fire weather, fire danger statement, and then you would work on that time, 12Z to 23Z. And then you run dismiss, and this is the grid you would get on the right here. Once you do that, as always, run the formatter launcher and your SPS for increased fire danger. And then you would edit your headline, which is here in green. I have these canned statements that I put in the fire weather guide and the fire danger statement and red flag warning guides, both on the Google site and in the binder now. So elevated fire danger across whatever region today. Typically we break those up into North Carolina or South Carolina, or we'll do both. So elevated fire danger across southeastern North Carolina today. You get the idea. Also want to write your reasoning, and this is also a canned statement that I have for each of the products. So for fire danger statement, combination of low fuel moisture, low relative humidity, and gusty northwest winds to near 30 miles per hour will lead to increased fire danger across whatever region this afternoon. And those are listed in the guides. The main thing that I wanted to point out was the automatic inclusion that we have now. So in the HWO, it pops up, as you can see here in this bullet, fire danger statement in effect from Saturday morning through Sunday afternoon. It also creates its breakout automatically with any other, as it does with any other hazard. Fire danger statement here in the day 2 through 7, assuming you issued it during that time. And it also shows up in the ZFP, which I don't believe it did before. It shows up automatically here. And again, all of this is the same with the red flag warning and fire weather forecast as well. AFD is a little different. The AFD will not display the FDS. It's similar to the SPS. It doesn't show it in the watches, warnings, or advisories here. And it's only for the red flag warnings. So you see your test red flag. So some of the reminders as we go through this, I mean, this was, your base hazard creation, something we do all the time. The one thing I wanted to point out here was that all the headlines just get automatically generated now, so you don't have to deal with that. And it's easy to kind of keep track of through different shifts and as you progress through time. So some reminders: start the collaboration process early. As I said, make sure you start that on the first part of the shift, because you don't know if, or first part of your forecast package, you don't know how long it's going to take for some of these offices to respond. Maybe if Columbia is not considering a fire danger statement, but we wanted one and maybe Charleston wanted one, it's going to be drier near the coast, but it might be difficult to reach them. They may take a little time to respond to. So just start that early so you have enough time to do all this. And the fire officials have to approve the hazard. Again, it's all about the fine field moistures. And if it's rained a lot recently, we don't want to be the ones to make that decision. We want to make, put the ball in their court where they have to tell us it's too wet for fires to occur. Even if it's something we already know, it's good to have that confirmation from people that deal with it every day and know a little bit more and have more knowledge on that subject matter. And again, collaborate this with Raleigh or Columbia. Whenever you're creating the fire hazards and you're issuing these products, make sure that your headlines are accurate and appear where they should. When I say appear where they should, in each of our products, HWO, ZFP, fire weather forecast especially, through and make sure they're all listed there. And check your headlines. Again, I have those canned statements for you just so we have something to work off of. But if you want to highlight something different, perfectly fine. Just make sure they're accurate and representative of the conditions that we have. Again, we have those help guides so you guys are never in the dark. They're in the fire weather program page on the Google Sites. Also, if we have an internet outage, they're now in the binder right at the front. And probably the most important thing out of all of this is make sure that your grids and your fire weather forecast contain hazardous criteria. Our burners really like to burn on days where it's just at that border condition. It's really effective for them to take advantage of those days. So if we have in the fire weather planning forecast conditions that aren't representative of a fire danger statement, they might want to go out and burn. But if there's an FDS or a red flag warning in place, they cannot do that. So just make sure those grids and the FWF contain the hazardous criteria. Make sure you're matching your hazards in your forecast. All right. So here I wanted to talk about some spot forecast reminders. And the reason I'm doing this is because I expect us to see quite a few more in the coming days, and I'll cover that in the coming months. And I'll cover that in the partner reminders here soon. But Matt sent an email about this, and as you see now, spots will automatically populate in this menu, and they'll populate on top of this manually enter wildfire request here. It'll say auto. You select auto for product issuance as well. It'll get you to the next slide here. Excuse me. There's an option to do a manual spot request over the phone as well. And I think this is going to end up giving us a little more flexibility for our fire partners. And I'm going to advertise this to them. A lot of them, I imagine, they're kind of an older crowd, and I don't think they're wanting to do these spots if they can help it, especially with the private companies that burn on behalf of NC Forestry. I feel like we've had some instances in the past where we see fires on satellite or radar and we never got a spot for them. So I'm hoping to while I'm increasing the advertising of the spot forecasts, also tell them that if they're uncomfortable doing it online, they can call us so that we can enter these things manually. And this is a great thing that we have now where we can do this over the phone and talk to them about it and get their information and kind of go through the process. You can also correct a previously submitted spot request. A lot of these come in the morning. I've seen several instances where they've messed up the times, got them backwards. And this keeps, once we call them, this keeps them from having to issue another one. We can do it quickly on our own, kind of talk them through the process, make sure we're getting their information right, and correct the previously submitted spot request. And so once you click on that, this is the page you get. And Matt, if you're still on, one thing I wanted to mention here, I think I took these 2 screenshots in succession. I'm not 100% certain, but if you look here, I've got manually enter prescribed. And then when I clicked OK, it reverted my radio button at the top to incident type to wildfire. So it doesn't seem to be carrying over the selection that you made for incident.
Yeah, I actually was gonna bring that up. That was the first thing I was gonna say after your talk. I'm planning on emailing Virgil about this after,
Okay.
because I didn't think I changed the override for this, but also at the bottom there, it doesn't really give you a lot. It only gives you 5 different elements. What if you needed to type something else like ADI or whatnot for the fire? Right. So that's just, it's definitely, I guess at this point, that manual request thing, I can't confirm that works 100%, and I'll definitely look into it further. So, but the other, if you do get a regular spot, it should be working as normal. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I was going to mention that as well. Just we're still ironing out some of the details here. So just make sure you're paying attention to all of the input here. That was part of the reason for putting this screenshot here. But I want to encourage everyone to kind of walk through and go through this this process of manually entering a spot. Even though there are a few little bugs here that we kind of pointed out, just be comfortable with this, because I imagine some of our burners are going to want to call in and take advantage of the opportunity for us to put in the information for them. That's just a hunch for right now. We'll see how it shakes out. But another thing I wanted to mention, and this came up in the last partner meeting, was ignition time does not necessarily mean forecast start time. So whenever you do forecast start time, the way it works is it'll start the forecast for your spot request. Some of the National Weather Service folks and fire partners have mentioned that they can look and see from the fire weather forecast and also the spot itself when the inversion is going to break. And so they like to see 2 hours weather leading up to that. So I bring this up to say that if there's some confusion over the phone or in the spot request itself about ignition time, kind of iron that out with them. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to call these folks. They really like it. Whenever they hear from us, it lets them know we're listening and paying attention, but also kind of irons out some of these small details. So last couple of reminders here. If you're unclear of the info, call them. Like I said, they really like it. It lets them know we're paying attention. And in some cases, this could be very important for the safety of their crew. So just make sure if you have any questions at all, call them. Check your grids prior to submission. Think about some of the potential mesoscale impacts. The thing I think about here is the Sunny Point forecast. Whenever you issue the fire weather forecast, Brunswick County by itself, or Brunswick County and some of the other counties in that fire weather zone are averaging over a large area. Whenever we get a spot forecast for Sunny Point, obviously very different type of weather and mesoscale impacts going on as compared to something inland. So just remember the FWF is averaged over a large zone. The spot is a spot. So those mesoscale impacts can be important. And if you can add any detail into the discussion or into your forecast, make sure it'll add value and put it in there. I'm sure they'd love to see that kind of information. And talking about the discussion, it's okay to provide some additional detail in there. Don't make it overly long, 1 or 2 sentences maybe. And that doing that at the expense of the main discussion is probably a good idea. They don't want to be reading a whole paragraph about, the different type of mesoscale impacts that they could possibly see. So keep it plain language, keep it short and sweet, and don't add it if you don't think it's going to add any value to the forecast. But just use your best judgment here. This will be different in every situation. And then
Jordan,
read the forecast. Yes.
Sorry, just a quick question on this. Should we be deleting that fog potential at night in the unfavorable, favorable part of the discussion that gets carried over into the spot discussion? Should we delete that in the spot discussion, you think?
It's such a small part of it, I would leave it.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason I say that is because last time we went to the prescribed fire, and we encourage people whenever COVID's finally over to come out with us. Some of the burners that were there mentioned they had a prescribed fire, and then the next morning they got a call, and there was a very thick fog blanket from the smoldering fire overnight. And then once they got there, visibility was down. They said less than 1/8 of a mile. I don't know, but they said the fog was just really thick in that area. So I think fog potential in the areas where a previously burned area, I think the potential is high there for any kind of issues. And they were concerned about automobile accidents, and they're liable for that. So I still think that's good information to leave in there. It's also short and sweet, so just kind of leave that in there.
Thanks.
And then the last thing here, just make sure you're reading through the forecast. Think about any potential impacts of things like gusty winds or the sea breeze, and just make sure those are highlighted in there and that you're okay with the forecast that you have. And then the last thing here, some partner updates. This was the previous meeting with NC Forestry. Still haven't heard much from South Carolina Forestry this year. I know they're still working on trying to get some meetings together, but so far they like the NBM mixing heights. They have good performance. They really like the consistency across the CWA borders. They don't care where our CWA is, but they get frustrated whenever we have a category 2 up against a category 4. So they really like the consistency that the NBM is providing. So consider this whenever you're doing your fire weather forecasts. The only complaint here is that it's a little low on the good mixing days. And this actually, one thing I suggest doing is using your NBM mixing heights, kind of go through, populate it, and then I like to edit the area of the max mixing heights, or run through the NBM, find where mixing heights are at their highest, and then I use a shrink taper there to kind of increase my mixing heights just a little bit, and that actually gives them a really good flow across the day as far as a mixing height standpoint goes. So just a suggestion there. As you would expect, they're way behind on prescribed burning. So expect a big push at the beginning of next year to kind of get some of their previously forgotten prescribed burning done. And this is likely to translate into a lot of spots in the coming months. Again, this will depend on COVID. They're not gonna, I don't think they're burning with COVID, although there have been a couple of emergency prescribed burnings they've done. But in Eastern North Carolina and Eastern South Carolina, I don't think it's going to be high priority. So depending on what COVID does, we might have a lot of spots in the coming months. Also, they did mention, and National Weather Service folks mentioned, the potential for more fire-related products. That was kind of the spark behind some of this training. Was lack of prescribed burning has led them to request more fire danger statements to limit wide-scale burning. It kind of helps them control that. So if there's a borderline day, we might see where in the past it would not have been requested to put a fire danger statement, where now I think they're going to be requesting that fire danger statement. And I'll update everyone via email with any significant news from the future virtual calls. I think we have a couple coming up in the next few months. I'll update you then. Wanted to mention while I had everybody, don't forget the fire weather forecast update. The morning update began on December 1st. That update is due by 9 a.m. So please don't forget that. And I'll take any questions or comments. And if you guys can think of anything that would help you out when forecasting for fire weather concerns, or anything you'd like to see on the Google site or in an email, or maybe even in GFE, please let me know. Send me an email, and I can get started on that.
Yeah, Jordan,
Yeah.
I had a had a quick question about that, the 9 a.m. time. I know a lot of times, if I'm on an 8 shift and I'm doing a morning briefing, and if it's not done till like 8:45, it's a lot of times it's kind of a tight squeeze to get it done by 9. And honestly, I'm not done till like 9:15 or 9:30. Like it could take 15, 20 minutes or so at least to get it out of it. So how tight is that 9 a.m. cutoff? Does it need to be out the door by 9, or is it like sort of the ESTF updates where you have a little bit of wiggle room on both sides to issue it?
Yeah, I would say you have a little bit of wiggle room there. Ideally, I think they would like to see it after the inversion burns off. Just to kind of an update on the conditions for the day.
Yeah.
9 a.m. is no hard deadline.
Okay.
Actually, 9 a.m. is a hard deadline. They want to have it earlier because they got to get out into the field and they got to be doing their stuff. So they like to see an update as early as they can get it.
Right.
Because I have a tough time. I'm almost gonna have to start my updates before the morning briefing because that's a really small window to do all your grids and your fire weather grids between like 8:45 and 9. So.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think that fire weather update is probably more important than having the briefing right at 8:30. So, I mean, if there's a significant weather day as far as fire is concerned and there's problems, I would either have the briefing earlier or delay it until you get that. Because, I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here for doing forecasts, not doing an 8:30 briefing.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they needed it right at 9 or they could get it 15, 20 minutes later. That's kind of what I was asking.
I get that. I'm just saying that I think that because when we brought it back in, I asked them what time did they want it, and they said 9 a.m. would be perfect for them. You know, anything later, they want to be on the way out to where they're going and what they're doing. They don't want to be sitting there waiting for the forecast. So the longer they have to wait for the forecast, that's the longer until they can get out to the field and start doing stuff. I mean, I can reach out and talk to them and find out, but I mean, I know that when we brought this back in a couple of years back, they were keen on that 9 a.m. because that's like when they are really starting to get their stuff done.
Okay, I was also asking because I think a lot of people, I mean, not just myself, but myself too, send it out a little after 9 oftentimes. But thanks for response. Yeah.
Hey, Jordan.
Yep.
Rick had a question earlier. It says messages for fire danger into a work file in AWIPS, like work FD1. I guess he was.
Yeah, those canned messages.
Yeah.
I just typed that in there so I wouldn't forget it, basically.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Rick.
Those canned messages you were talking about for the fire danger statements, you know, like the headlines and then the canned weather messages and stuff.
Yeah.
You said they're, you know, like in the binder and on the Google Drive. Is there a way we can just get those into a work file like work FD1 so we can just pull them up and copy and paste them in AWIPS rather than having to sit there and look and type and stuff?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we don't
Send an email out and get it in.
We don't have to have a work file. I could just put that in the it'll be in the formatter launcher, like up there. You'll just copy in a call to action. That'd be really easy to do. So
if you're able to do that, that'd be fine too. I just, you know, it's easy to screw something up when you're copying something. So
yeah,
just
Jordan,
if we had it somewhere, it'd be easier.
So Jordan, if you want to write something up, then like look through it and if it works out well, we can just email me the statement and I can dump it in there, and it'll be under the call to action. So you can just basically just copy and paste it right in. So a couple clicks of a button. So.
All right. Yeah, I'll write that in.
I have a question, Jordan.
All right.
The Sunny Point, you know, the Sunny Point forecast, I'm confused. Should that be its own little forecast, or should that come from the fire weather grids? Or what were you saying there? I'm confused on that one.
Yeah, so for Brunswick County, whenever that information goes out in the fire weather forecast, it's averaged over a large zone.
Right.
Itself, basically, I'm saying pay attention to if you have a spot that close to the coastline or in an area where you would typically get some mesoscale impacts. So with that area, like a sea breeze, make sure you're putting detail into your wind grids of when you think the sea breeze might push through the area, because that information, that wind shift, is very important for the people that may be doing a burn that day. That makes sense.
So
Okay.
the spot forecast pulls from that grid, but the
Right.
FWF pulls from the average of those grid points for the whole county.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's why there seems to be I guess there would seem to be a disconnect, right, between if you're doing that and then what the grids show. But I guess the users are using the spot forecast and not the grids.
Right. So as long as you're putting detail into the grids whenever you're updating that for a fire weather spot, you'll be fine. That should be the main takeaway here, is just making sure if you have a spot close to the coast or close to any mesoscale zones, areas where you can think of, just make sure you're putting in, like, whenever that sea breeze or whatever is moving through. If you have that detail in the grids, it'll be captured in the spot.
Okay.
Doug, did you have a question? He's having some microphone issues, so.
Just want to make sure it works.
Oh, it works fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Jordan.
I have another thing. As far as the manual entering of spot on our end, like, Weather Service headquarters is good with this, because my concern is if we enter the data for them and there's a typo and we don't catch it, that could come back to liability to the forecaster that's working. Now, I realize we're government employees and we don't typically have to deal with that, but that could cause problems, and that would be my concern.
Yeah, I think that's like a correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's in there. It was set up like that to be a backup if the requests aren't making it in the AWIPS, so we can type it in. My guess is that's what it's there for. If things are down one way or another, we need to manually type it in. So
I'm just saying that because if we're going to start telling people, oh, well, we can edit it for you manually, I'm not sure that's a road.
No, I don't know if I don't think I would recommend to tell people that we're doing this. This is sort of like an in-house backup way of doing it, but we don't need to promote this. Maybe it'd be better if we don't. Yeah.
Well, but Jordan had mentioned about letting people know that we can enter it, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I don't know what anybody else thinks. That's just seeing how things work on the fire side, and when you get an escaped control burn or something, the shitstorm that follows, that would make me worried.
Okay.
I mean, there is a tutorial about using the spot stuff, and I mean, maybe we could do some like go-to type meetings where we go over that and work with our partners to let them understand how that works, so that we can get them more familiar with that, where they're willing to do that. But I think having them call us and then us enter it manually is a road full of pitfalls there.
Okay. Yeah, the idea behind that was basically, I've been several times where I don't know if it's by accident or if they're in a hurry, where they'll issue something and it'll be in the wrong field or backwards, and they get kind of frustrated. And whenever we call, we fix it for them anyway, and we'll submit a new spot. So my idea here was just to kind of cut out the middleman and help them out a little bit, but if it's a liability issue, I get it from that standpoint as well.
Yeah, and that would be my concern.
Well, then have them email or even text you. This way you have concrete evidence. This is what you were asked to enter. That would be my request from them.
Well, if we were having them email us, they could just do it anyway. I mean, I was trying to save them some time too, because I know in these situations, they're trying to get out as early as they can. If they're having to email us anyway, we might as well just stick with the regular spot forecast and direct it that way. But I didn't realize this was going to be a muddy solution or issue here.
Well, I mean, email is the specifics, or even text us the specifics. This way, like I
Right,
said,
but like
we
I
have
said,
concrete
if they're going to
evidence
take the
that they're
time to
interested.
email us, they could just submit a new spot.
Yeah, I agree with Terry. I think we should just keep this as an in-house backup way of doing it if we have to, but for the most part, there's no need to advertise this. We should have the partners sort of go through the usual protocol of submitting something.
I think we definitely could work with them though and do some, webinars and stuff and go over it and get them more familiar with with submitting spot forecasts. So if you do it enough, it gets to where it's pretty quick to do. So I think that would help.